Broadcasting from the heart of downtown Hollywood. This is SoFlowRadio.com.
Stuart Reed, attorney, mediator, and yoga instructor. Here for the next hour to talk about law, mediation, and yoga. So let's drop into our breath and come to order. The show is now in session.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in with me, Stuart Reed, my friend George Rodriguez, my friends here, Leah Segi, Michelle Gelbendorf-Fine, two psychotherapists, a psychologist, licensed clinical social worker on the Stuart Reed Law and Mediation Yogi show today. The idea is that we're going to discuss how conflict, like being in a lawsuit and a divorce, could be any kind of lawsuit. You might be in a lawsuit with your condo association or your neighbor or your employer. A lot of people feel they're against the wall and they might have difficulty sleeping. They might have difficulty thinking clearly. So I'd like to have some psychologist opinion about how conflict affects people's psychological wellness and what type of ways that people can make themselves feel better, either through therapy or through things like mindfulness and yoga. We'll talk about the mind-body connection. And let me just ask my guests to say hello and tell us what is your practice. And I know that Leah practices in Hollywood, Florida, and Michelle practices in Lake Worth. And my office is in Hollywood. George is here in Hollywood.
Woo, Hollywood.
And actually, I live in Hollywood.
Yeah.
My office is in Hallandale. And so let's get started. What interests you in this topic? Why you agreed to this magical mystery tour? You're both looking at me. I'll start with Michelle. You're closer to me.
Well, first of all, I was asked, and I appreciate being here. I feel privileged and honored to have been invited to this wonderful show. I think it's a great opportunity to express to people how to deal with stress, how to deal with conflict, how to deal with things that come their way that might be unexpected. Stress is a natural human response, and we all go through it. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's the meaning that we attach to it. And we want to look at, instead of being mindful, is to be mindful. And because we have a lot of thoughts going on in our heads and a lot of conflicting things, and they could be very distracting from things that we really want to get accomplished in life, whether it has to do with work, whether it has to do with relationships, just well-being physically, emotionally. So it's a privilege and an honor to be here. I work with a vast majority of my population is adults, and I see everything that you can imagine. I've noticed that mindfulness and these kinds of practices have been a tremendous adjunct to my practice. In addition to other orientations, I'm very eclectic in my practice, and I'm very open to different styles that could help a particular patient. So I individualize it for each patient. And when they come in, they usually are very stressed out, they're overwhelmed, they don't know how to deal with things, they're depressed, they're anxious, they've been traumatized. Conflicts within the house, conflicts in the relationships. And basically they come because whatever it is that they've done, they've used up all their emotional resources and they just don't know what else to do because whatever they've done up until this point has not worked for them. And this is usually when people seek out help. So it's something that I love to do. I've been doing it for over 23 years. I've been in private practice for a good majority of that time. And I couldn't ask for a better profession. This is totally what it is that I was meant to do on this earth.
That's one of the reasons why I invited you on the show, because I know you love what you do.
Thank
I've
you.
seen you working with people before, not in there with the room with you, but people that I've sent your way, and I've always got good feedback that you really care and you're present and you're thoughtful, and I know you and your family personally,
yes,
so I know
thank
what kind
you.
of person you are, and I know it's going to be delightful
Thank you.
to
Thanks.
have you
People
here.
that say the exact same thing about you, Stuart. You're one of those attorneys that really, really care. And that's not to say anything bad about attorneys. I mean, there are very good attorneys out there, but you're one of those that really takes it to heart and cares about people more than, the financial component of it. And that's something that's very rare.
Thank you. And so, Leah Segi, practicing in Hollywood. Also, one thing that maybe you can touch on as you're talking about yourself and your practice as well, that I think that Dr. Fine or Michelle, whichever, Dr. Michelle, that she was talking that
You
people
can call
come
me
into
Michelle.
our office for all kinds of reasons, something about stress and anxiety and family problems. Do people who come for therapy necessarily have psychological problems, Leah?
Well, I think we all have psychological problems as soon as we experience stress. Stress is such a pressure on our psychological system. And when we understand how the nervous system works, and it really is supposed to be in balance. We have a nervous system that is designed to experience stress and function and then to relax. But a lot of people these days are in stress mode 24/7. They go to bed stressed, they can't sleep, they wake up anxious, they go through the day with anxiety, and there are a lot of reasons for that. But we just happen to be in a very stress-filled society. So it does affect us psychologically if we don't find a place to chill out and relax. It's one thing I liked about meeting you in yoga was you're a lawyer that does yoga. I love it. Because
different.
the fact that
Leah was one of my yoga students from the earliest time after I got my certification at the I Love Yoga studio.
Right. One of the things that, I love to think is that anybody working in any profession can find a way to do self-care. And certainly law is a stressful position because, there are people that are at odds with each other. And I like that you do mediation because if there's a way to communicate that doesn't bring people to actual court and they can find a way to communicate peacefully so they can work things out, that's great. It's a great service that you offer. And what I do as a psychotherapist is help people identify for themselves what's going on for them, and if they can first identify their feelings, whether it's anger or sadness or hurt, anxiety, they identify the feelings, and then from that place recognize what is it that they need. Once people, instead of blaming the other person, you did this, you did that, you made me do this or that, that's really not owning their own stress.
So let me ask you something, because you're saying as far as people coming to get a sense awareness, self-awareness is probably the first step in order to cure. They might know already, I'm anxious, I don't feel good, I'm not sleeping well, but I guess through therapy you help people get to know themselves better and find the root cause and then give them suggestions about healthier
Coping
ways
skills.
to cope. So did you find in your practice of yoga that yoga is therapeutic, that you find a way to know yourself?
Absolutely. I've been doing yoga for decades already, and it is a wonderful way to bring your breath, awareness of your breath, to what's going on in your body, and to help bring your mind into some kind of concentration. When you do that, you're not like spun out all over the place thinking about a million things. You're focusing and concentrating, using your breath. It's a wonderful way to bring your nervous system into a relaxation response.
Well, I hear from people frequently that they don't do yoga because they're not flexible enough or they can't sit still long enough. What would you say to people who have reasons why they don't want to do yoga?
I think there was a wonderful I Love Yoga postcard that said, saying you're not flexible, therefore you can't do yoga is like saying you're dirty, therefore you can't have a bath. So I like that. If you're not flexible, then you need yoga. And because the body is really a reflection of what's going on in the mind. If the body is tight and rigid, probably the mind is also tight and rigid.
Well, one thing that I like to do in classes and that I hear other yoga instructors do often is ask people to just scan their body and see where they're holding stress. Like, I used to have pain in my jaw, and it's because I was clenching my mouth too much. And so now I consciously refrain from doing it, and I don't have the pain, but people carry stress in their shoulders, or you see people walking around with a frown on their face, grimacing, or maybe they're clenching their fist. So if maybe you feel anxious and stressed out, you just scan your body and think, well, where am I actually physically carrying this stress and anxiety? Is that a tool that people in therapy use for their clients as well? Like, hey, check out where you have the stress in your body and release it, and you might find some relief from it.
Well, I use that a lot in therapy. The thing is when people have certain stress in their life, what often happens is that they regress to their primitive brain, to the amygdala, the limbic system, which is in charge of the emotional component of the brain. And I think mindfulness, well, in my experience, mindfulness, and also I do some cognitive behavioral therapy, existential, all sorts of things, awareness, helps sort of wake up the left part of the prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of logical brain. That's the logical brain. So if you walk into a department store and you see, for example, a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum on the floor, and the parent, of course, is, I've been there, you don't really know what to do with that situation. And,
it's the primitive brain.
It's the primitive
control.
brain. And what's happening is that's a normal functioning thing for a 2-year-old because the left brain has not fully developed yet. So what happens is as we age, our left brain gets more and more developed. And so if you saw a 30-year-old doing that, you would probably call the authorities because that means there's something wrong with them, because their left brain should be much more evolved at that point in time. So what happens under stress, our left brain gets kind of tossed to the side and our right brain takes over. And this is what happens. This is what we teach for anger management and also to help communicate in relationships, because what happens is we start yelling at each other and it escalates and nothing gets accomplished. And now we got it out of our system, but there's no solution because we, like Leah was saying, we are basically blaming the other person. As long as you're blaming the other person, you're not looking at yourself. When you're not looking at yourself, you're not going to be aware of what you're doing to contribute to the dynamic, and you won't make any change.
Well, let me pick up on two things that you said, and maybe, hopefully I didn't break the flow, and we'll get Leah in there too, because we're not here to talk about child psychology, but something that I realized being a parent is that kids are not little adults. So you're saying it's okay for a little kid to be acting out on the floor,
normal.
But not normal. So sometimes when I'm disappointed, like, how come my daughter isn't acting more responsible? And I'm like, I realize she's not a little adult. Little kids are more like monkeys, I think, than they are like adults sometimes.
It's not as evolved.
But you're also talking about rational thinking, and I think that a lot of times that people might be feeling really bad because they're not thinking rationally. They might have unrealistic expectations of themselves, things that they were taught by their parents who may not have been healthy, or from society that we know in many ways is not healthy. It has people pursue things that may not be really pursuing their bliss, who they are, and so people feel a little disjointed. And we'll keep up the theme about yoga too, that the yoga means unity. So you're trying to feel in touch with who your true self is, and I think being rational, being scientific, it is a good part of it. You both are probably familiar with a book that was meaningful to me when I was in my 20s. I think I came across it in the library in college, called Guide to Rational Living, Harper and Ellis.
Yes, Ellis,
sort
big
of
on cognitive behavioral psychology.
Yeah,
and also David Burns wrote Feeling Good. Chapter 3 lists the different cognitive distortions that we actually all engage in on a daily basis, but some of us more than others. And that's when it becomes a problem, and that's what elevates, that escalates the anxiety, the depression.
So Leah, do you think that maybe people who are feeling all stressed out and are having, like, I don't know what to do, maybe it's because they're not in touch with reality?
Well, what is reality? Oh my gosh. Let's not go
That's
there.
a whole other show, right?
Yeah, a fake reality or real reality. But I think this idea of what's going on inside the individual, the brain, is very important, because when we focus outside of ourselves and that communication that's outside, before we focus inside, we can end up with a lot of trouble. There's I think it's fabulous little graphic of how the brain works, which if we have it on camera, just like this, if you put your thumb into your palm and put the top over it, that's the way the brain is. This is the brain stem. The wrist going up is the primitive level. The thumb going in is the limbic, the amygdala, and all those emotional parts.
I'm demonstrating as you're talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the top part is the cortical, the most developed part. What happens when we flip our lid is that we are not connected. Our brain is not connected. So when we can do the internal work of saying, oh, I'm anxious because I have a need for respect or whatever, then we're bringing these two parts together. And when we are not connected to all parts of our brain, then we are in a state of stress. So what I like to do is teach people not only what they can do in my office, but teach them self-soothing tools so that they can regulate themselves. Yoga is certainly one of those tools. I don't teach yoga, but I often recommend.
But you take yoga regularly.
I take it to
So
keep
do you
myself.
incorporate that maybe into your practice? Like how people, like maybe even your mother or your father is saying, take a breath. I mean, it's because
Right.
it helps calm
it's
you
such
down.
an age-old truth to breathe when you're angry or upset. Take 10 breaths and just focus on coming in and breathing out. 10 breaths can absolutely help relax the nervous system. It's the simplest and the most positive.
George, you taking notes? You've been very quiet there. I think you're
I'm
afraid to jump
I'm taking
in.
breaths. What a great idea.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love George.
No,
So
I
we
lo-
have to make sure that he survives.
The breathing
we
thing
don't
is
wanna
is a
make-
good idea. I like to I learned from yoga to breathe when I'm not stressed, when I'm just feeling fine. It's like I should be breathing better right now.
To be
When
aware.
I'm driving my car, I'm just like, why am I not breathing? I should be doing a better job breathing right now. Preventative breathing, just to feed my mind some air in case something.
You forget to breathe
shit
when
comes
you're
up. We do
stressed.
forget to
Yeah.
breathe. Well, yeah.
Well, George is a yogi too, though.
Yeah.
Because being a yogi
Ish.
means
I'm a
that
dilettante.
you're in touch with yourself, you're in touch with your body. If every now and then you check in with your breath, that's a yogi tool. And it makes you feel good because if you're stressed out, there's health problems, there's
Sure.
mental faculty problems. Stress is not good for you, right, doctors?
It depends,
depends how you
use.
respond.
Yeah, it depends how you use it. Stress could be a motivator because remember it's an energized type of feeling, just like anger. If you use it properly to your advantage, stress could actually motivate you to do things, to get things accomplished, to prevent bad things from happening. So stress could actually be a good thing. It's how you channel it. That's what.
Yeah,
makes
it's
the
what gets people out of bed and into the office.
difference.
There's
Something
actually
like that.
a word for good stress called eustress, EU. Eustress. So if you're going on stage and you don't have any real eustress, you're going to be kind of flat. But you get all charged
Correct.
up and you're ready to go. That's eustress.
Right.
What we don't like to see is distress. When people are
Correct.
so overwhelmed with the stress, their sympathetic nervous system is just firing and firing, and they don't know how to
Cope.
calm down and relax. That's not good. So as long as stress is balanced with relaxation, those are the two functions of the nervous system, like having an accelerator and a brake on a car. You don't want a car that just goes. You want a car that goes and stops. That's the way our nervous system works. If we can stop it when we want to, and mindfulness, mindful breathing, these are all ways to help calm the nervous system down. And once we're using our whole brain and we're calm, we can much better deal with whatever the issues are that are facing us.
And both of you are clinical therapists, and typically a session is an hour or 2 hours or how long? It doesn't matter.
I usually give them an hour. I also do trauma work, so that sometimes runs into 2 hours because it's very important for them to process. A lot of this is about processing, and to process everything so there is some sort of closure for them to an end point.
And Leah, hour.
My sessions are usually just a bit under an hour. I also do short sessions. I do phone work. I do what I called mind-body breakthroughs, which could be 15 minutes. And it's kind of an amazing thing when I learned some of this energy work, how quickly you can access the source of a problem, the neuro-emotional complex, that is keeping somebody in a state of stress. So if somebody comes in and they're just anxious, and they just can't break that cycle, by identifying where in their energy system there's a blockage and releasing that blockage, I mean, that could be just incredibly fast.
So the reason why I was asking about how long it is too, and I see it, is I was wondering, because I know that sometimes people go to psychotherapists maybe for years, and is there like a goal that you have in a particular session to leave somebody with a particular thought, or is the goal more long term? Sort of like at a yoga class, there's a more or less a pattern that we go through. We drop in, we become attentive to our breaths, we withdraw the senses from the outside world, and then as we stretch out our body and open up our joints, and in order to feel open physically and mentally and emotionally. There's also certain yoga ethics that I encourage people to think about, like being content and serving a higher purpose, not being so hard on yourself and other people. Now, these all come from yoga. And then when we're done, I'm hoping that people feel a little better. They're able to cope through their day. They've learned skills that they could do anytime they feel stressed out or in pain, drop into their breath or sit up a little straighter. But in a psychotherapy session, by the time the session is over, do you feel like people have things to think about and mull over that'll help them until the next session?
Who are you asking?
Either one of you. You're nodding at me and you're closer.
Absolutely. Usually when I walk into a session with a patient, I mean, we have pre-existing goals that we set up at the beginning of their journey. So we try and sort of go according to what their goals are, whether they want to express themselves better, they want to alleviate depression or anxiety. But a lot of times, you can have an agenda in your head, and then the patient walks in and some crisis happened last week. So of course we're going to go with what the patient wants or needs for that particular session. So usually when they walk out, we've looked at some cognitive distortions, we've done some coping skills, we looked at maybe some history. Why is it something is being triggered? A lot of times it has to do with something traumatic that may have happened in the past, and this is how they learn to cope with it from the right brain. So we incorporate, like I said, the left brain by countering some of the cognitive distortions. Some of them are should statements, like you said, being hard on yourself. And I think part of mindfulness is to be non-judgmental of yourself and your environment, to sort of embrace what's coming your way, that maybe it's just a test of something that you need to accomplish or that you need to overcome. And so that's something that, I help them do.
Is there something that maybe you do, Leah, and maybe you want to answer too, Michelle, but it sort of touches on that with a patient, it's like, if they say, okay, but what if I get this anxious feeling again before I see you the next time?
Right.
So what kind of things do you tell them to do on their own, short of picking up the phone and calling you?
Right.
Leah, help me walk through this.
No, there are some very useful short-term self-soothing skills that I like to teach my clients. I also have some of them.
Any that you could share on the show that we could all do, maybe?
Yes, we can all do them. And I also have some on my website under the lowdown from Leah, skills that people can incorporate for themselves. One of them is the butterfly hug. And the butterfly hug came from EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, when humanitarian assistance went down into areas where there were a lot of children that had experienced
losing their parents.
In Mexico, losing their parents, flooding, losing their pets, losing their homes. And so working with a large group altogether, this is a technique that developed, and it was the butterfly hug. So the first thing is starting with the breath. So we can all do that. Just breathing into your belly. You could put your hands
sitting
on
up straight, maybe, like in
sitting
yoga?
up straight, like in
relax
yoga.
The shoulders,
diaphragmic
relax
breathing.
the face.
Right. And putting your hands on your belly. So, and especially if you're telling children how to do it, but we all have that inner child. So when we're stressed out, that little child in us wants to be comforted. So breathing into your belly, into your abdomen, and breathing out, and just feeling like you're filling up that abdomen like a balloon, and breathing out. And then as you're thinking about whatever it is that's distressing you, Could be a situation at work, a situation with a relationship, job loss, anything. Take your arms and cross them over so that the right hand is touching on the left upper arm and the left is touching the right. And then as you're thinking about that, just let this butterfly hug you, tapping one side and then the other, alternating, because that way you're getting the right brain and the left brain, the right brain and the left brain. And as you're focusing on whatever it is that's bothering you, just notice whatever comes up, as if you're looking at clouds in the sky, just letting them pass by. And doing that for a moment allows the information that has been stuck to get processed. And then you can stop and reevaluate that situation that was so troublesome. It's such a simple tool, but if people did that when they're ready to wring somebody's neck, they can calm their system down and be a lot calmer. So I say, let the butterfly hug.
It's better
for you.
than kicking puppies, because you can't always find
Or
a
banging
puppy.
your head against the
Yeah,
wall.
yeah, it's better.
No, that's
Exactly.
not.
Yeah.
It's not productive.
No, this is good. I'm going to try that next time. Puppies are safer
I'm
for a while.
stressed out that I'm only looking at the back of our heads over there. I might even shut off
Well,
my
that's
Facebook
not the
Live.
real
Okay,
video.
everybody on my Facebook Live, go to soulflowradio.com.
And click on the video.
Yeah, because you'll get a much better camera
Well,
angle, and
So
I
folks,
can't see it over there anyway.
There's a
and you
TV
can't
logo, and that's when they're going to be the YouTube video anyway.
see it. Okay, just to let you know.
It's got better sound
But I
quality.
bet they all dropped off.
Dropped off over there?
Yeah.
Maybe. You never know. They could watch both.
No, Michael.
Open up another
Michael's
window.
still watching.
Hi, Michael.
Haha.
Bless your heart.
So Leah, you were talking about tapping to help
SoulFlowRadio.com. Yeah.
to help let go. And I had read something in a book that I found very meaningful, The Untethered Soul, Singer.
Michael
Is it
Singer.
Michael Singer.
Mickey Singer.
And
He just has a new book called The Surrender Experiment, which is a mind-blowing.
okay, that's next on my reading list then. But I think, and I'm paraphrasing, that he was saying that problems are not what cause you anxiety. It's your resistance to the problems. I mean, people who are, and that means a lot, because some people can accept reality and then still move on and still be, somebody might have a debilitating accident and like, okay, I'm still here in the world, thank God, and they move forward and say they don't resist reality. But other people, they resist, like, I remember what it was like before this accident, and I'm never going to be the same. And they just go dark and deep. So is
they'd
this
have
part
to
of accepting reality important in psychology?
Well, I think, like for the example that you just stated, I think a big part of it is to acknowledge that this is a loss and to allow yourself to grieve with no judgment. And again, it's a processing issue where left brain are integrated for complete processing. And then once you process that and you go through the grief, then you can come to a level of acceptance and deal with it better. So
Speaking of reality, I just put on my Kleenex box at my office a list of 10 reality facts that they're just objective facts that we have to accept. But when we get into real trouble is when we are resisting those realities. For example, you win some, you lose some. I mean, we all lose. So if we don't accept that, then we're just going to be fighting against, how could I not win? Or we are all perishable. That fact of mortality is something that we like to not think about, but it's true, that we are going to be separated from everything we love. These are facts that nobody wants to accept, but unless we do, we are fighting against what's true.
And I guess these are common themes
absolutely.
with your patients too. People afraid or concerned that I'm not achieving what I expected of myself.
life is not fair is another one.
Yes, exactly.
Life is not fair.
Life is not fair. It's not fair. Yeah, that's right. Life is not fair.
It's
and
not
if we
fair.
don't accept that, and we certainly see children saying, but it's not fair. And
Right. It's not.
That's right. But I think another important component, just to kind of add to what Leah was saying, is that when you do, let's say you feel a trigger, like you feel like you're triggered and you're emotionally charged. So instead of opening your mouth and saying something at that moment, it's probably better not to, because now, like you were saying, the inner child is the one talking.
Well, the limbic brain, like you were saying.
The limbic brain
it's-
is the inner child.
You're just lashing out.
Right. And the limbic brain, the inner child has no business in the adult world. And so we need to sort of take the inner child to the side and just sort of talk to her or him and incorporate some logic into the situation, and then go as the adult and deal with adult life.
So I'll bet you both of you have some familiarity with this, and I think I've read about it. The limbic brain and its connection to maybe conscious breathing, like yogic breathing. Does it
Yes.
sort of calm the limbic brain
Yes.
and encourage the more rational, higher thinking brain?
The
when you
7-11
breathe?
technique that you talked about last time.
5, 7, 8 hands.
Oh, 5, 7, 8 hands.
It's
Sorry.
a
right.
meditation
Oh, right.
with
But
hands
there's the
and breathing.
7-11 one.
Yes.
Where we could do that too if you want.
Yes.
Where you inhale.
We're trying to teach people skills they could
Yeah,
use.
let's do it.
Okay, and this is a very, very powerful technique to calm down the nervous system and wake up. So it creates space for the left brain to jump in. So and then if you want to stimulate your nervous system, then you would inhale for 11 seconds and then exhale for 7.
So a slow,
So difference.
because inhaling 11 seconds is a slow, long inhale.
Right,
too,
but you
like
start the 7-11 is to
2.
calm down your nervous system.
And then out for 7.
So in through your nose and out through your mouth, like you're blowing on soup or hot chocolate. So
In for 7, out for
In-
11.
Oh, out
in
for 11.
for 7, out for
Okay.
11 if you want to
Yeah, that's a
calm
big
down the
difference.
nervous system. If you want to stimulate the nervous system, you inhale for 11 seconds and then release for 7.
Oh, for stimulate, you mean to be more attentive? If
Yeah.
you feel
What-
like you're
actually, the
not paying
inhalation,
attention.
stimulates the sympathetic nervous system,
Correct.
which is the
Yeah.
adrenaline action, and the exhalation is the parasympathetic nervous system. So that calms you down, and those two need to be in balance. And as you say, if one is overstimulated, it's going to be more active, and the other is
like
going
the
to
way
be
you said that.
more
That's-
dominant.
That's a very good way of describing it. So
See, we didn't
to
prepare
create
for
balance.
this. This is all impromptu, but I knew, I had a feeling that psychologists, therapists know a lot about the breath connection with just your wellness and to calm
Well, it's all
down and-
interrelated. Everything is connected. You can't just work with one part. Everything is connected. This is why, like you said, people feel stress on their shoulders. They might, some medical issues might be exacerbated by stress.
Have you ever seen that TED Talk video? It's, I think, one of the most popular ones. I think it's called the power pose, where a woman explaining that if you stand confident, you feel confident.
What's her
If
name?
you go,
Amy Cuddy or something like that. It's fantastic.
Sounds familiar.
I taught my clients
Sure.
that when I watched
Just
it.
like, if you walk into it, it's not only about succeeding at a job interview, but I think it's also about how you feel yourself. If you're walking down the street and your shoulders are hunched over, you're looking down at the ground, you probably feel deflated. But if you inflate and you stand up tall, you feel confident, you feel strong. And that's why even there's like the famous Charlie Chaplin song, "Smile when you feel like crying," and it just makes you feel good. If you smile even when you feel bad, it helps. It's therapy. Right, doctors?
Yes, absolutely.
I'd like to ask you a question if I can.
Yes.
We're talking about the emotional person and the person that's more balanced with their whole brain. When you are seeing clients, do you sometimes come across clients that seem like they are so stressed out that they're not even coherent? I mean, you probably see people that are very emotional about their cases.
Yes, but I think that a lot of times the lack of coherence has nothing to do with the emotion. It's just not having, like being a lawyer, you're trained to look at issues a certain way. What are the facts? What are the law? How do they fit in? And you're just sort of like building a building. You put one brick at a time to build an argument that stands and won't fall. And a lot of people may know what their friends have told them. You're entitled to do this. Don't let somebody push you over. Don't let them take advantage. So they might be in my office saying, okay, this is what I want. These are the results. And then part of my job is to explain to them, okay, you want to get there. Here's the path to get there. Do we have all the necessary ingredients? Maybe not. It's sort of like reality checking. But I think that my job a lot of times is to when somebody comes to my office and they feel really stressed out and something's really bothering them, is to help calm them down and realize, look, you're not the first person that's gone through this. You're not the first person to be divorced. And it's going to be fine. You know, the fear, I think, for a lot of people is leaving behind something that was familiar and not knowing what's going to come next. I'm never going to have somebody to share my life with again, or you know, it could have been a lot. I think a lot of people stay in relationships because they think, well, it could be a lot worse, and so this
they're
one
afraid
is
to be
great,
alone.
but it could,
One of those truths that are on my Kleenex box for people to consider is life can get better.
Exactly, and you want it
That's
to
right.
get better.
That's
so
right.
It can, but when you're in a deep hole, it feels like it's going to go on forever, whether it's depression or going through a divorce or something terrible, a loss. You kind of lose touch with life can get better.
Right, because it's the meaning that you attach to what's happening. It's not necessarily what's happening; it's the meaning that you attach to it and how you integrate it, into your thoughts. So,
And me personally, I think it's everybody's responsibility to try to be happy and to try to make other people happy too. I mean, we're not put on the earth to be miserable and hated and to complain about it. I mean, the world's a beautiful place, and I'm sure that the world wants to be appreciated. Or if we're created by a creative power, the creative power wants to get some gratitude once in a while. Hey, good job. Thanks for giving me good friends and good family, and even a dog could be my best friend.
And that gratitude is such a healing component of, it's personal therapy. When people start looking at what they have that is good in their lives.
well, this way they see the big picture.
Yeah.
They don't just zero in on the negative.
Well, that's one of the yoga practices too, with the yamas and the niyamas, the 10 commandments of yoga. There's 5 things to refrain from and 5 things that you don't refrain from. One of the things that you're supposed to never hold back is to be content, to find reasons to be content. I woke up today. I had a nice day yesterday. Things are available. So there's always reasons to look
We have
forward.
all the conditions we need to be okay. It's just sometimes we lose touch with that.
Right. And what happens a lot of times also, if you come from like a negative lenses, in some ways you're kind of you're orchestrating really your destiny. Because if you tell yourself, I'm a failure, eventually you're going to believe that, and you're going to fit that mold and behave in ways that are consistent with that.
But then it's not only, I guess, what people tell themselves or what they think, but also, I guess they have to find new things to do, new routines.
Correct.
Because you might go to a
habits
therapist,
right.
and a therapist might help you see through the cloud and understand yourself better. But if you're still doing the same thing day in, day out, maybe sleeping in late, never see the morning, never see the sunrise, not getting fresh air, not getting exercise. Yeah, back to yoga as far as the unity for wellness. You can't neglect your body.
Right.
You can't neglect your ethics. You can't neglect your sense of peace and quiet that you get through meditation. Otherwise, you feel disjointed. You feel pulled in all directions.
Right. Have you ever had a case, Stuart, where it kind of shook you up, where you sort of felt like you were sort of being sucked into their emotional situation and it caused you stress that you can think
All the time. Yeah. Because, well, first, it's not so much just a sympathetic response that I'm feeling their stress. It's more of like the limbic brain survival mechanism,
Yes,
because you have responsibilities to your client, and sometimes maybe they're unrealistic expectations that they have. And you have to do your best and explain everything clearly. And if their unrealistic expectations are not met, you might be in a situation where you have an unhappy client complaining about what you did. So I have to make sure all the time that I explain things clearly. And sometimes it's hard if somebody is talking over you and not letting you speak, or they're pointing their finger or saying things that are incorrect. Sure, everybody gets defensive, but being a professional, you got to take that breath and think before you talk, and think of how to say something that's going to be productive and helpful.
Correct.
And not be just like being a child again and pointing fingers at each other. So sure, it happens all the time where I have to try to be the adult in the room, and you're the navigator to take people through the dark, haunted forest and to the other side.
But they're looking up to you, so.
Well, hopefully, because if they're not, then it's sort of like the two-headed monster that wants to walk in two different directions. And then maybe that's a time where you decide, okay, this relationship isn't working, and good luck with your case, but I'm not the person for your case anymore.
That can happen.
If you're a lawyer and you're watching this show, that's important advice. You got to know when to fold. Hey, that's Kenny Rogers' advice. But you sometimes got to know when to get out of a case. If you don't have a good relationship with your client, it could be a potential problem for you.
I think it's the same for any professional. I'm sure Michelle agrees with me about this, that there are certain clients that may come in wanting treatment that are not appropriate for either of us, or any professional has to recognize their area of expertise and what's not in their area. So for me, if people are coming with children, I don't see children because, as you said before, they're not little adults. They really have a very different developmental process, which is not my area of expertise.
It's different training.
Right. If somebody's coming for sex therapy, that's something I would refer out. I also refer out marital counseling or couples counseling, because it requires a very different set of skills to talk to two people than to talk to one person, or family therapy. But I specialize in working with individuals, intrapsychic, their own individual issues, and finding out where they are blocked, what conditioning from the past may affect their perspective in the present, and helping them let go of things that are no longer serving them.
So is it really so complicated to be a human being? I mean, can it be? Because you're talking about, helping people get in touch with this and that. There's so many things that go into how we are. Is there a way to just sort of let go and make it simple?
If we followed all the yogic principles, we'd all be just perfect. We would breathe.
Be no war.
We would. Right. We would not be violent. We would be grateful. I mean, this is what we strive and aspire to. And I think it's great to have those aspirations. But meanwhile, we are seeing the opposite. And one way to look at it is that where there's more light, we try and bring light into it with our profession and with yoga. There's also a greater shadow. So we're dealing with big shadows right now in the world and in our government. And we have to, really withstand the shadow that is around us.
No person is an island, right? We all rely on each other. We all share with each other.
We're all connected.
Yeah.
I have a question for the guests, because I think most people know when they need a lawyer. I mean, maybe they don't. Maybe some people, I should have gotten a lawyer sooner, things like that. But I think that most of the time it's obvious, like, wow, I need a lawyer. Or, I got arrested. I need a lawyer. But I don't think most people know when they need therapy.
That's a great question.
That is a very good
question. I think that a lot of people are wondering, am I keeping it together or what? Am I just barely keeping it together? Could I be doing better? Should I be seeing a therapist? Am I crazy? Or is everybody going through this? Just to find where they are on that scale of the people that you see. How would you, what would you suggest as a guide that someone use, whether or not they need therapy? Yeah,
that's an excellent question.
Go ahead.
Well, I might be biased, but I think everyone could use a therapist.
Okay.
Because it's a sounding
agree.
board, it's reality checks. What happens with most people is they don't seek out counseling until they are in a place where they are really, really distressed. And all of this could have probably been prevented if they had come in sooner. Yes, we could pick them off the ground and help them get off the ground, teach them some skills, give them some awareness, some insight. But usually when they come, they've tried everything.
Okay.
We're the last resort.
Sure, but I'm thinking there might be people out there that could use therapy and they don't know it.
Absolutely.
So,
oh yeah, and they might lack that self-awareness, and they blame everybody else. That's the biggest thing. As long as you're blaming
Right.
everybody
It's
else,
not
you're not
me.
looking at
It's
yourself,
them.
right? What's that? You point one finger, then three are pointing
Yeah.
back at you. So
Well, on the drive over here, see, Michelle sprained her ankle yesterday, so I was the Uber service from
Thank you so much,
Boynton
Stuart.
Beach down here.
Wow.
But I was
Amazing.
telling her that there was a point in my
Oh, my
life
goodness.
where I felt I didn't really know what I was doing with my life and what would be best for me, and so I was seeing a therapist maybe like 10 times or yeah, I think so. And a lot of times I felt like we're just talking, and I'm so glad that the show isn't like this. I was afraid that I was going to have two therapists, and they were going to be asking me, "So what do you think?"
no.
I'm waiting for that.
No.
I'm
There-
waiting.
Yeah, like,
Let's
there's
analyze
different-
Stuart.
You know what? I'm so glad you brought this up because there's different styles and different orientations, and every therapist, I think, does differently. So there are a lot of therapists that will just sit back and kind of let you process and maybe ask you some questions or give you some validation.
Well, only one you can go deep inside yourself and know what's in your heart
Yes.
and know how you're
but
feeling.
you might not know the skills to incorporate and to manifest so you can be more functional, so you can be more productive, so you can meet your own personal goals.
And that's my point. That
Yeah.
after a while,
You gotta
I
teach
I
some of this
I
as
realized
self-education.
that the purpose, I think, of therapy is not because you have some psychological problem, but to discover, do self-discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I feel a certain way? Why do I not like swimming? Or why do I not want to go out with friends at night? Or why do I not like dating? Or what? I'm not talking about myself. I like dating, and I like swimming, and I like going out at night. But the point is that a lot of times if somebody wants to improve their life, they want to have more joys, they want to be more open-hearted.
It's quality of
I
life,
think
yeah.
why am I closed off?
Right.
Why am I afraid? And maybe there was a triggering event, or maybe you were just taught that from your parents. Don't talk to strangers. You
But
can't
that could be
trust
triggering.
anybody.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think of therapy as personal growth, and people that want personal growth, go get it. It's just like people that want a good lifestyle, they want to eat healthy, they want to exercise their bodies. That's a healthy way to go, to check out whether you're thinking without distortion, whether you're carrying old resentments that maybe it would be better to let go of. People that are ready for that will, on their own, spontaneously say, I think I'm going to check this out, just see whether I'm okay. It's the people that they talk about when they come into therapy, they say, my husband says I must be crazy because why do I need a therapist? The stigma of people that are afraid of therapy, they think they must be mentally ill. Those are the people that probably don't take care of themselves and end up going to a doctor in a crisis rather than doing prevention to stay healthy.
They want a magic pill.
in your opinion, do you think most adults are really just children walking around in adults' bodies? And they never really
We all
grew
have
up?
children inside of us. You want
But I don't mean it in a positive way. I mean people who still have their brains working the same way in junior high school, and people being jealous and petty and
that still
I
are,
just
you
feel
mean?
that a lot of people just never really fully grew up, never learned maturity, and that's what I'm talking about, or we've been talking about as far as rational therapy and reality checking
and coping skills.
Do a lot of people come to the therapy because they just never grew up emotionally?
And they don't know how to deal with the adult world. Yeah, absolutely.
They need a parent to take care of them, and they don't know what to do without somebody taking care of them. You're nodding, Michelle. And
I'm not so
Leia's
sure
not so
about
sure.
that. I don't know that we all have those components in us. It's really a question of who's in charge. So if we can take care of our little child within us that wants to have a tantrum because they didn't get their way, then we're in charge. We're befriending that angry part of us that wants it our way, and it's not fair if it's not going to go our way. If we can befriend that part of us and calm it down and say, okay, it's not always fair, you didn't get what you wanted, and it's okay, life gets better, then we are in charge. But we all have that child within us, and it's really a question of, sometimes we see people that it's all child.
But the thing is, you don't want to shut down the child.
Of course not.
You want to embrace that child. You want to love that child. And no matter what it is that the child is feeling, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with any of those feelings. It's just a matter of, again, incorporating that left brain in there so the adult takes over and deals with adult-related issues.
Let me ask you a question, something that I've said that before. That's my job on this show, is to ask questions.
And to
right?
stay on mic.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, George. See? So I've heard, and is it true, that a lot of times kids whose parents are psychiatrists or psychologists, when they grow up, that they have a lot of psychological problems. Is that true? Because I would think
have
that
children, Michelle?
if you grow up
I have a
and you have a
17-year-old
psychologist or psychiatrist, that they would get you to think about things in a healthy way and to have good perspective and not to be so hard on yourself.
Well,
But-
to answer your question, I think that it's not so much the profession. Just like in any profession, you have professionals that are better at coping and professionals that are not so good at coping. And, you can preach, but if you don't practice it yourself, some therapists are more evolved than others. Some parents are more evolved than others. And children feel your stress. If you have a stressed out parent, you're going to have a stressed out child. They sense these things, especially because their emotional brain is so powerful. Would you agree, Leila?
I do agree with that. There certainly are people that, are kind of psychotic at home, and then they walk into their office and they're cool, calm, and collected.
Right.
Well, if the children are witnessing something that is very bizarre, rage and judgmentalism, they're going to be affected by that.
Absolutely.
But we're not like that, right?
No. My son's valedictorian.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was wondering, if you think that we might have a brighter future with more psychologically healthy people, if people are educated and raised in a way where they don't dislike other people, they're more have more compassion towards other people, they have more compassion towards themselves, they're not impatient, and they learn that things don't come your way immediately. I mean, is it possible on a national scale to raise healthier people?
There certainly is a lot of access to all kinds of wonderful ways to evolve and improve ourselves. With mindfulness and the MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, it's available widely
Online.
all over the country. I have it on my website, a free 8-week course that anybody could sign up for and just learn how to calm themselves down. So we have access to yoga. I mean, 30 years ago, yoga was like a real far out, nobody does that kind of thing. Now, every place does it.
That's
LA
right.
Fitness does it. Any place does it. So yoga, mindfulness, it's all available. But at the same time, we have right-wing groups. We have insanity, unbelievable amount of. It's really a question of what does the individual choose to access. They can go either way. And we hope that the people that we touch in our lives are going to choose life, choose the good path.
Yeah.
Well, it makes me like our country. I think we grow up thinking that we all can make ourselves what we want to make of ourselves, and it's all about individual responsibility. And I remember as a kid, like one of those little public service commercials. You might remember the song, "The most important person in the whole wide world is you,"
and you hardly even know you.
See, and you hardly even know you. But so that's how we
That's
we
true.
teach people that you're the most important person. You're the center of the universe, and everybody's out there struggling to get their own piece of the pie and build what they want. Don't you think that people feel better psychologically when they are not only in it for themselves, when they're serving a higher purpose, they're taking care of their kids, their family, their community, their country. You have a sense of purpose.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think that if they just focus on themselves, if we don't live in a bubble. Humans don't live in a bubble. We are social animals, and we are supposed to know how to relate to other people, and kind of like in bunches. So yeah, I think that doing and giving of yourself is part of what makes you more evolved and part of your growth. And
you spoke about things that bring people to see a psychologist. How about loneliness? That's probably a big thing too. A lot of people feel isolated, and they don't know how to make friends. They don't know how to meet people. They don't know how to do yoga. That's a good way to meet people.
There you go. Get out there. Get out there. There's meetup.com, people with common interests that kind of like get together periodically and do things that they enjoy. That's a really good site that a lot of times I recommend to patients. The other thing I wanted to add about the mental health profession is it's not as stigmatized as it used to be. I have a lot of patients that just are like you and me, normal, and they just maybe struggle with a certain area in their life. And they just come in for some coping skills or, just to help them handle the situation better. But that's becoming more the norm, I think. It's definitely,
but I think it's
people
sort
are
of
proud
like,
to say, I'm going to my therapist. Do you find that?
Yes, I do. And I think it's more than just coping. Coping is certainly a first
part of
step
it, yeah.
when people don't know how to cope. But
Right.
beyond coping, people may be much more limited than they can be. And when they can open up the possibilities of living to their potential, then it's really exciting.
Yep. So Stuart, how has the yoga affected your practice? What is it that you've noticed in terms of how you handle people, how you deal with cases that come your way, the mindfulness, the meditation, all of that? I think it's wonderful for stress. So I'm wondering how it's impacted your life.
I think I'm a happier person because of doing yoga and because of all the nice people I've met and the fact that I know how to cope with stress and that I know how to stay healthy. And so I just feel better. And I think that helps me deal with people on a daily basis.
Calmer.
That to have somebody who's a calm presence in the room, somebody who's thinking clearly, somebody who's got an open mind and an open heart. I think that yoga just helps me be a little more grounded and centered with people. I'm not necessarily teaching yoga to my clients, but
Right.
but I might share some yoga perspectives, like the idea of not to be too attached to things, to sometimes let things go so you can move forward, or not to be so fearful of losing things, and to trust yourself, your abilities, your education, your experience.
So your perceptions in some ways have changed in terms of how you view the world, how you view other people, how you view your environment. You see them in a more positive light, would you say?
Yeah, and I feel like also teaching, you're connecting with people too. I think, like I said earlier in the show, yoga means unity, and it's understood on many levels. You're more united with your breath, with your body, with your inner self, with other people. And I think teaching as well, you understand yourself better. If you want to teach somebody something, you have to be able to assemble it conceptually inside yourself to communicate it clearly to somebody else. And teaching is sharing, and I think
And sharing is caring.
we said that the last show.
It's still valid.
It's still valid.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It didn't. Are you sure that's not like a trademarked,
We'll
copyrighted?
check. We'll check. We'll credit it at the end if it is.
How funny.
It's good karma if you believe in that kind of thing, but it's good karma to share and to help and to be there for other people as well.
But I find that the yoga studio where I teach and where I learned how to become a teacher, they have 2 lawyers in their training program now, and I've become aware of other lawyers in the community who also teach yoga. And I think that because the legal profession is one where people feel a lot of responsibility and stress, and your mind is always going, because if you miss one thing, then the whole thing could fall apart. So I think a lot of lawyers are turning to mindfulness and yoga practices lately in order to feel well and to be healthy. And just sitting at the desk all day long, hunched over a computer, you get neck pain and back pain. So just sitting up straight and twisting, it's healthy. There's all kinds of yoga. On the car ride over here, Michelle and I were speaking about yoga, and she appreciates yoga, but you said that you didn't click with the studios that you went to.
Yeah,
and what I tell people,
and
just keep searching. You'll find your place. It's sort of like when somebody says, well, I heard a song and I didn't like it, so I'm done with music. Yoga is as broad
Same with
as that.
therapy, because as you said before, every therapist is so different.
Right.
So you have to find the right residence for yourself, whether it's yoga, therapy, or anything.
You got to click with that person. And
Super. Well, I clicked with both of you and with George today. George has given me the symbol that we're about to play some more Led Zeppelin to wrap up the show. And Leah Segi, therapist in Hollywood, Florida. Michelle Gelbendorf-Fine, therapist, Fane in Lake Worth. And I'm Stuart Reed. My office is in Hallandale. I'm an attorney and a mediator, and I teach yoga at the I Love Yoga studio in Dania Beach. And I'm here the first and third Monday of every month talking about topics related to stress and conflict and yoga on SoFloRadio.com.
You're listening to SoFloRadio.com.